to State of Play. It's our August 2026 call. My name is Lori Friedman, and I am your host for today's call. You're with Indivisible Marin out in the San Francisco Bay Area. I see a lot of familiar faces today, which is great, but welcome to all of you that are new to these calls. We've been doing them every month leading up to a major election since 2022. They are recorded, so we will be recording this call. And for those of you that are watching on the call, a special welcome to you, as well as to everybody that's new to the call today. For those of you that are new, I want to talk a little bit about our organization because we are fairly unique. We are a legacy or an original chapter of IndiMarin, started by Susan Morgan, who's here today. She's our founder and director still after almost 10 years. That in itself is very unusual in the grassroots world. We've grown now to over 12,000 people, some here in our own county, some elsewhere in California, and many out of state. Our work is basically in 4 areas, and the grassroots world is large. There's more work than any one group can ever do. We've picked our lanes over the years based on where we think we can make the biggest difference, and one of those is elections. We do quite a bit of voter outreach to elect Democrats to both houses of Congress as well as the White House. We do have a federal national emphasis because here in California and where we live is very blue. We don't need to do a lot of work right around here, so we reach out beyond our own boundaries. We also do elected official outreach, and that is working with our elected officials and helping people in other states work with those to promote a government that's for the people, holding our elected officials accountable. They work for us and helping people make those connections. We also do local outreach to our own communities. That's around the area of protests and and opposition work, as well as working to support communities here that have been made very vulnerable by the Trump administration. And then lastly, we do outreach to all of you, to our own volunteers, to train them and empower them and give you the information that you need to do the work that's important to you. And that's what we're here today. We're going to be talking about the election and how to reach out and work for the elected official, for the candidate that you connect with, that will help us do what all of us want, or our first priority, and that is to take back power in Washington. To do that, we have a large leadership team. We have a steering committee here. Most of the members are here. A special thanks to Betty Van Glon from our phone banking group. She's working in the working to admit people and working out in the waiting room. Susan is here, our director and founder. She'll be helping out in the chat. Matt Schmidt from our leadership team, our steering committee, will be running the Q&A today at the end and monitoring questions in the chat. And then we have members of our leadership group. Andy is here, Sue Ike is here, and they'll be working and talking to you in the chat, answering as many questions as they can. And if they can't, they'll be bringing those to our Q&A at the end of the hour. So a big thanks to all of them for their help and their support of this call over the years. Our agenda is the same every single month. We'll cover the 5 areas that impact the election the most. That is the electorate, voters, just like you and me. How are we feeling? We'll talk about fundraising. We'll go in depth on the candidates at both the level of the Senate and the House. We will talk about election security because unfortunately it is a huge factor in today's elections, and close with volunteerism and where you can make the biggest impact for the next month or so. Then we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes left for Q&A. It's a very data-heavy call. It will be recorded, so you don't need to take notes. You'll all get that recording, and it will also be on our website and on our YouTube channel. Before we get started, I want to cover some basics about this year's midterm so that we're all kind of on the same page, because I know many of you might be new to these calls. We are in a blue wave election, and we know that because the minority party always has an advantage. The party in the White House does not do well in midterms. Trump is not on our ballot, and we're dealing with a historically unpopular party in the Republican Party. So all of that is creating this major blue wave that we're having. It's very exciting. It's very encouraging for all of us. It's continuing to grow. There's a lot of comparisons that are made with 2018 because he was in office in 2018, and it was the last blue wave election. But just as a heads up, we're not going to have the same results that we had in 2018 because we don't have nearly as many competitive districts to work in. And so it's going to be less of a margin, but hopefully with the same energy that we're seeing, the ultimate will be the same. We will win power back in Washington. There's a couple of effects that we're seeing because of the primary elections. Primaries tend to be later in a midterm year. And what we have seen is what many people were hoping for. The party has gotten younger and it has gotten more progressive. The degree to which we don't know yet, we'll have to wait till November, but that's definitely happened across the country. There are some challenges, though, for these new candidates. When you come through a bruising primary, like we've seen in places like California 22 and Michigan, you have used up most of your money just to get to this point, and you're usually facing an opponent that is well-funded and hasn't had that primary. You also have to bring together a divided electorate, half of which didn't vote for you in the primary, and you have a short runway to do it just from now until November. So challenges that create a switch in priorities. We'll be prioritizing those candidates from here on out. That will have an effect on volunteerism. Our margins are very thin right now. We don't have a huge number of Senate opportunities or House opportunities. We basically have to win everywhere we have an opportunity. And that means we need to reach out and work for a wide variety of candidates from centrists to progressives. Lastly, a couple things about the data points. This is a data-heavy call. We'll be throwing out a lot of numbers and terms. And I just wanted to speak to the polls for a minute. Polls are great. I'm completely addicted to them myself. I read every single one, but most of them are terrible. And we need to really watch for those. They're getting more and more unreliable and poorly done. So we're going to look at polls, and I will use polls that are only gold standard, that are on the New York Times preferred pollster list, that use only likely voters. We don't want to look at polls that have every registered voter in it. It's way too late in the season for that. And we want to make sure that there's very little undecided vote left. Those are good polls. We'll look at the methodology, making sure that they're doing things the right way. But polls are increasingly unreliable as a source of prediction for elections. I do use the ratings. I think the Cook report, which is the one that I use, is really helpful for us because they use a variety of data, not just polls, to create the lists of candidates that are likely to win, that are likely to need support. So we'll talk a lot about the ratings today, not quite as much about the polls. So the first thing, the electorate, that's you and me, those are the voters. How are we feeling? Have we moved since the last time we met in July? The generic poll is a great way to look at the electorate. It asks people, would you rather see Democrats or Republicans in charge? And it has a very strong correlation with the presidential popular vote, ultimate vote, and the ultimate vote in the House. So very, very helpful. And you can look at this. I use the Emerson poll because it's been around forever, and they do it exactly the same way at exactly the same time of the month, every single month for years. And you can see from April through June, we were pretty flat. We were at about 50%. We had about a 10% lead. That's great because in 2018, we were somewhere between more like the 7, 8, and 9-point range. So we were a little bit stronger, but we were flat and nothing seemed to be happening. And we all questioned, well, is this our ceiling? Are we going to be able to get any higher? And we did. So in July, we finally saw that burst of voting energy now that primaries are over and more people are talking about the election. The undecided vote went from 10% to 5%, which means most people out there have decided who they're going to vote for. And that's incredibly important. We've picked up a few more percentage points than the Republicans. Now what we need to do is make sure those people vote, because voting intent and voting ceiling isn't the same thing as actually showing up at the polls. So we'll be talking a lot today about how do we get these voters that have now made up their minds about which side they're going to vote to actually get to the polls. The details are pretty much the same. We're leading among just every single group that you can imagine that Democrats need in order to win. The double haters are those people that don't like Republicans or Democrats, and they voted for Trump in 2024, but they've come back to us. It's a very small group, but in a tight election, they can make the difference. Voter enthusiasm and voter approval are not very helpful. We were the most enthusiastic party in 2024, and we didn't show up on election day. And people vote for parties and candidates that they don't approve of all the time. I'm not particularly thrilled with my own party this year, but I'm certainly going to vote for them anyway. So there's not a lot of correlation there. What is interesting is the leading issue is something we all need to keep an eye on, especially those of us that are talking to voters. The economy is still the number one across the country, almost everywhere. It's the number one issue, but we're starting to see character show up more and more and rising higher and higher in polls. And we're going to see that in some of the people that we've elected, people like Sherrod Brown in Ohio and James Tallarico in Texas, people that are very, very high on the character scale. It won't be that way in every race, but it's interesting that we're starting to see that more and more in voters' minds. All right, fundraising. We talked in July that we were hoping that we'd have a good second quarter. The numbers weren't completely in by then, but they are, and we had a great second quarter. Democrats won on every single parameter. All great news. In 3 areas, we'll talk about the committee fundraising, candidate fundraising, and special outside money. On the committee fundraising, the DNC is doing poorly financially. I think we're all aware of that. They're in debt. They were handed debt when Ken Martin took over this year. They have raised quite a bit, and they've spent it on increasing and sort of growing state parties, but we're still carrying a lot of debt. The good news is that the DNC and the RNC don't spend a lot of money in a midterm election. They're mostly focused on presidential elections and building state parties. So they help around the margins, but it's not going to be a devastating thing for us. We are leading in both fundraising at the Senate level committees and the House committee, which is the DCCC. So that's all good news. The candidates, we've been doing great. There's no other way around it. We have outraised Republican candidates in every single category. That's not unusual. We usually do. We lead in all the small dollar donations. The Republicans don't have the equivalent of an Act Blue to raise money, so this has always been an issue for them. One interesting fact is that 70% is the amount of races that are won by the higher spending candidate. That's not surprising, but the other 30% are usually won by Democrats. And that is something that really speaks to the strength of our candidates. On the Senate level, the numbers, this is not a misprint. Our Senate candidates have raised almost $150 million, the Republicans just over 20. That's how far apart we are on the Senate spending. On the House side, we are also up not that far, but Democratic challengers are outraising Republican challengers, and in open seats where both candidates are coming in sort of on equal standing, we are outraising them. So couldn't be going any better for candidates. If you are interested in helping out a candidate, the priorities would be people like Dr. El Sayed in Michigan, because he's out of money. He just came through this bruising primary. Maine is another example. So those candidates need our help more than anyone right now. And then lastly, outside spending. Republicans always outraise us here. We'll never be able to catch up because this is corporate dark money and we just don't live in those circles. Over $3 billion is the estimate that will be spent in outside spending. That is the most in midterm history. This will be the least transparent election in United States history because we do not know where this money is coming from. The good side is that, or the flip side of that is there's no strong evidence that this kind of money makes a huge amount of difference, although we keep spending it in huge numbers. The dark ads that come in at the end, the television ads, just have not been proven to be very successful. They come in at the end, and we've already seen today that most people have already made up their minds whether or not they're going to vote. So this, I think, is to be decided. It's a TBD on whether or not this outside spending money makes as big a difference as it could. All right, I'm going to go into the candidates now. I want to talk a bit about the races. We did this last time, but I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page because it is really important to understand how different candidates are and what their lives are like, what their campaigns are like, depending on how competitive the race is. So if you're a solid Democrat or a solid Republican, you're going to win by 20 points and you don't need to campaign. This is why we have such a problem in Washington. Most of our candidates on both sides are in this category and they don't need to campaign and they are not really accountable to their voters because they are so secure. Likely races are sort of close to that, 8 to 20 points. Mostly these candidates just want to stay there. They don't want to get moved down. So they'll campaign just enough to win, but they don't do a whole lot. The lean races are ones we work in all the time. These are races that are projected to win between 4 and 8 points. For us this year, because we're in a blue wave election, our candidates are fairly safe as long as they have a strong campaign. Republicans are still vulnerable, though, because the things that affect these races are the political headwinds, the energy that's out there, turnout. They need support from their local and state volunteers and groups in order to be successful. And that's just putting us in a little bit of a better situation. On election day, these Republicans will be vulnerable, but we'll probably be safe as long as we did all the hard work. All the changes will come in the toss-up area. These are completely dependent on turnout and the hard work that volunteers do. They are expected to be won by anywhere up to 3 points. These are the races that need national work. So this is why we're phone banking in places like Texas and Ohio, writing postcards to Georgia and Iowa. You need the political headwinds. You need a strong turnout. You need volunteerism. The side that basically does that the best is going to win. And that's where we come in. And it's not enough this year to just win by a little bit. We need to win by huge margins. Our elections are going to be challenged. We don't want to have a bunch of races out there that are won by 500 votes. We want races that are won by 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 votes in order to be sort of election rigged proof, I guess is the best word. All right, so what does it look like in the Senate? This is the map, and take away the blue arrows for a minute, just pretend they aren't there. This is what it looked like last January. We didn't have under this toss-up column, we didn't have any races that we could flip. So working on the Senate was impossible. There was just no way we were going to take it over. We have 47 senators right now. We would need to get to 51. We would need to flip 4 seats. There was no possibilities of doing that. But the arrow, now you bring the arrows back in. This is the way these races have been moved. Some of them have been moved 2 or 3 times since January. And this has created an entirely new map for us, and it has now put the Senate in play. So what do we need to do in order to win the Senate? We have 3 races here that are already leaning towards us that we don't need to prioritize in the next few months. Georgia and North Carolina is already a flip that's been moved all the way over to this side. And New Hampshire, we have 1 huge one to cover in Michigan, but now we have 3 additional pickup opportunities in Maine, Ohio, and Alaska, and maybe some outside possibilities here. So a completely different map. It's tight. We don't have any leeway. In the House, we have many more opportunities than we need, but in the Senate, we have to win every single race in order to do it. But it's possible, and I think everyone's feeling more and more encouraged the more time goes on. So where are these races? Before we get all excited about the flips, we have to hold the ones that we have that are vulnerable, and that means we have to win in Georgia, which it looks like we're going to do. John Ossoff is running a masterclass in Georgia on how to run an election, how to run an election in a red state. He's just doing everything right, and the polls are all in his favor, way over the margin of error. He's up into double-digit leads, and for a Democrat to be doing this in a red state is extraordinary, and not a surprise that he is being mentioned as a future presidential candidate. In New Hampshire, we have to hold this. This is a different state. All of these situations are completely different from each other. Remember, all politics is local, so every single one of these states is playing by a different set of rules. New Hampshire is an old, sort of an old school state. They don't have early voting. They don't vote by mail. They vote on election day. Their primary isn't until September, so they have 2 months to do this when we've all long past that stage, the rest of the country. Our candidate is Chris Pappas. He is a member of the House, and he's the first openly gay member of House. He's been there for a long time and quite respected in his state. Normally he would sort of coast in, but he's running against a Sununu, and the Sununus are political royalty in New Hampshire. John Sununu's brother and his father, I believe, were both governors there. So it's going to be a little bit tougher than normal, but most polls do have him pulling this out at the end of the day. Michigan is the race. All the yellow highlighted areas are things that are new since we last talked. We could talk all hour about Michigan and everything that happened there, and happy to answer questions in the Q&A, but we do have our candidate. He's running against Mike Rogers, who's a former congressperson. There is a poll out, but it is a terrible one. So he is leading in that poll in likely voters and losing among registered voters. So not a good poll, but this is the race. If we don't win Michigan, we can't take back the Senate. This is the #1 race in the country right now for our grassroots groups. Assuming we do that, we move to the flips. North Carolina has already been moved to our column, another masterclass in campaigns. Roy Cooper's doing great. His lead is now up to 9 points in the last poll. So we're very confident there, but that's only one seat. We need to get 3 more. And these are the 3 likely possibilities, all rated a toss-up. Maine is settled down since the last time we talked. I was on a call with their state grassroots people this week. They said it could not be going any better in Maine. Everybody has coalesced around Troy Jackson. He's an experienced politician, a former state senator and president of their state senate. He knows the state. He knows what to do. He's doing great. The early polls show him up a couple of points. His platform aligns the closest with Plattner's platform, so his voters seem to have come over pretty easily, and we are very optimistic that we will be able to win this, although it will be close. Susan Collins isn't running a very good race. I think she's been sort of unsure about how to handle everything that's there. She did not take advantage of a lot of the times she could have earlier on when we were dealing with Plattner as our candidate. And right now things look hopeful in Maine. Ohio is also going really well. Sherrod Brown is our candidate, of course, the longtime senator that lost his seat in 2024. This is the second poll that showed him up 8 points. That's extraordinary in a red state, and it speaks to the fact that he is the candidate for the moment. I think in Ohio, his background in being a union supporter, his policies, economic populist before that was even a term, and the fact that he's trusted and people know him, and he's a very known quantity. In this particular race, I think it's really helped him. So that's very exciting here. I was on a call this week that feel like that he is going to win this race. Now we need 1 more. Alaska would be the next one up. Alaska is a hard one to call because they do their elections differently. They're partisan. There's a nonpartisan primary. It's not for another couple of days. 4 top finishers will advance to a November ranked choice voting. So it's an impossible thing to kind of poll or predict. She feels like she is in a very, very competitive position, but this is one that we probably won't do a lot of work in. It's a bit closed, meaning they don't take a lot of out-of-state volunteers, and we probably won't see a lot of polling. We'll just find out on election day like everybody else, but this is the number 4. A couple here, Iowa is a possibility, though this is the only poll we're consistently losing, so I would say this is the least likely. Texas is a mystery. James Tallarico is a generational, transformational politician from Texas. Again, very high on that character scale, against, of course, Ken Paxton, who's the very MAGA Attorney General. The thing about this race that's striking this month is that he is now up a couple of points. His trajectory from being down to up is the strongest of any candidate that's been running so far. He's really increased by about 5 or 6 points over the course of the last 3 months. That's very unusual. I would hope that this race would get moved to a toss-up. It hasn't yet, but I'm hoping that by September that they will see this as being a little bit more competitive. Although he's raised huge amounts of money and he's doing great on his own, I think if the national group just got behind him a little bit more, it could be helpful. But right now, the consensus is he's still a lean Republican state. He's polling higher than any Democrat has ever polled in recent Texas history. So all good news there. On the House side, this is the same blue wave. We looked at this last time. The arrows are different because were in batches from different months. And so this bright green, I ran out of blue shade, so I had to go to green. These 4 races got moved in the last 10 days. Very unusual that you'd see races get moved this late in the season. So all encouraging, nothing but great news coming out of the House. This doesn't show, however, all the seats that went the opposite direction in redistricting, and that's where we are right now. So currently, if we had the election today with the same maps that we're all in today, we would only need to flip 3 seats because we have 215. But after all the lawsuits and the elections and the redistricting, we're at 209. So now we need to flip 9 seats to get to that magic number of 218. It's very doable. It's doable because of the blue wave has created 15 opportunities for us to do that. In 2018, we flipped 75% of those toss-up seats. If we do that again this year, that will gain us 11 seats and we'll have a 2-seat majority when we wake up in the morning the next day, hopefully after the election. We only need to hold 4 seats that are vulnerable. That's not very many. And we have the additional lean Republican seats, another 10 of those that we can pull from. So we have a good chance if we do the work to get back the House, despite all the nonsense that the Republicans have done with redistricting. I'm not going to go through all of these races, but you can see there's quite a few of them. The 4 blue ones in Florida and Ohio and Texas and Washington are the ones we have to defend that are toss-ups. That's not very many in relatively for what you normally see. Plus, we have all of these districts right here that we could possibly flip. And these are our lean Democrats, but they're pretty safe this year. So we're in really good shape. I want to spend a few minutes talking about California. We haven't done that yet. And the vast majority of people that attend our calls are from California. But even if you're not, there's quite a good education here in what gerrymandering does. And also the seats that we're working in here illustrate a lot of the dynamics that we're going to be dealing with as volunteers this year. So on the left-hand side is the map right now, what California congressional districts look like. We have 43 Democratic seats and 9 Republican seats. On the right-hand side is what it's going to look like if we win our seats. All of Northern California will turn completely blue. Most of the central part of the state, southern, will turn blue. The only things that will be left are 4 districts on the very eastern side of the state that are very rural with very few people, and then 1 thing down here that's a Orange County seat. These discolored ones are the ones that we're working in. Those are the ones that we need to keep blue in order to create what our goal is, which is 48 Democratic seats in California and just 4 Republican seats. There's another one here that's so tiny in Orange County, you can't really see it, but there's a little light blue dot in there. This would make us, pretty much Republicans already have very little power in Washington from California, but this would completely, really less than half of what they have right now. All right. So Proposition 50 did a lot of things. And when you redistrict and you gerrymander, this is what happens. And I wanted to go through this because I'm getting a lot of questions about where these people are that we used to work for and why aren't we working for them? And is Jared Huffman really in danger and all of those things? So the first thing that Proposition 50 did is it flipped 3 red districts completely to Democrats. We don't need to work in here. We don't need to work for them. We don't need to make phone calls. They are completely safe. That's how much we were able to flip the makeup of their districts. Mike McGuire is our state senator. He'll win. Almy Barra will win. And Linda Sanchez will win down in Southern California. But we also took two districts, 22 and 48. 22 is in the Central Valley and 48 is near San Diego. These are Republican districts that were made a little bit bluer and they could flip to us. And so this is why we're working in these 2. This will be the number 4 district that we contribute to the House. This would be the 5th district. Top 2 priorities for us, Randy and Marnie. And then we took 2 people that we're very familiar with. These were people that won by just a few hundred votes a couple years ago. We made them safer, but not completely safe. So we still need to be working for Adam and for Derek. And then these men, whose names are familiar to us, their districts became completely safe. So we don't need to worry about them anymore. They are independent and will win no matter what. And you might wonder where all these magical blue seats came from. Well, we went to 3 of the most Democratic districts in the country. Jared Huffman, Mike Thompson in the Sonoma, Marin, Napa area, and Garcia down in Southern California and LA. And we took a lot of votes from them, but they were so safe that they're still safe now. And that's basically how you do a great gerrymander. It's exactly what you're supposed to do. And then we took 1 district, District 40, and we made it solidly red. It was already mostly red. And although most districts have been changed to just a little bit in order to create more blue votes, these are the people that were affected the most, but they're fine. So 4 districts that we need to work in. And for those of you that have been working in California for a while, we used to work in 10 at a time. Most states don't even have 10 congressional districts, but we had 10 and we were working in all of them. So to come down to 4 feels like a gift for all of us. And I want to talk about each one of them a little bit because that will be our focus here in California for the next few months until we get them all elected. And each one of these districts is illustrative, though, of something that we're seeing all the way across the country. And in California 13, we have Adam running, won by just a few hundred votes a few years ago. He's a centrist in a conservative district, just barely a democratically leaning district. And I think what this illustrates is what it's like to come in and need to volunteer for him when perhaps he's a little bit more centrist than the volunteer is. And we're doing this, and we get some questions because not everybody agrees with everything that Adam does, but he represents his district, and that's the important thing. He's accountable to them. He is coming to our phone bank on Thursday to talk about just this issue with the volunteers, what it's like to volunteer for someone when most of his volunteer base is from the Bay Area. And so he'll really illustrate exactly what it's like, why he takes the votes he does, why he needs our help. And I really encourage everybody to come to that phone bank and listen to him and then make a few phone calls because he's very worthwhile, even if we don't always agree with everything that he votes for. For Derek Tran in 45, this is an example of a brand new candidate. He flipped a seat 2 years ago. He has never been in elected politics before. He did a great job, but he is very new and he doesn't have a volunteer base yet. He doesn't have a donor base yet. He's a very winnable candidate, but he needs a lot of help still. We can't, in a few years, he'll probably be on his own. But this year, he's a top priority for us. We need to hold this district. He needs our help to do it. So you'll see that across the country this year. First-time incumbents, new candidates need a lot of help, even if their district feels a little bit safe. Then we have the 2 seats that we need to flip. This would be the 4th and 5th seat that will contribute to Congress next year. Randy is everybody's favorite guy this year. There's always somebody that rises to the top and everybody loves, and that's Randy this year. He's running in 22. This is a very conservative district. We've tried running centrist candidates here many times over the last 10 years, have not been successful. So this year, a progressive candidate won. And this will be similar to Michigan and other places across the country. Can a progressive win in a purple district? So we'll be working hard for him. He's just 32 years old. The district is basically tied. It's a D+1. He's running a great campaign, but it was a bruising primary. He came out of this with no money and half electorate that didn't vote for him, voted for the other person. He won fairly narrowly. So lots of dynamics going on here. It's a great place to get involved. And it'll be a fascinating election coming through. And then Marnie Van Wilpert is down in 48. She's the 4th one that we're working for. She's a moderate in a moderate district. The dynamic here is that it's an open seat. There is no incumbency. So this is an opportunity for us. We don't have to worry about going up against a Republican incumbent. It's a great opportunity, but she is a first-time candidate, has never run for national office before. She needs a lot of help. So these are the 4 people. All early polling does show them up a little bit, but congressional polling is honestly, it's terrible. It's hardly ever predictive of anything. So nobody really pays a whole lot of attention to it. We won't know until election, the day after the election, how successful we are. But 4 fascinating candidates, different situations. There's something for everyone, for all of our volunteers in California. You can get behind one of these 4 people. On the state races, not a lot of updates. We know that the goal at the state level is to win, to protect elections in 2028 and to keep going with redistricting and making sure that we can keep up with Republicans. We have to have state power, especially in the 6 states. These are all presidential battleground states: Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. All have state legislatures that are up for grabs for either party. So if you live in one of these states, this is a top priority to get behind your state legislative candidates. On the governors, we also have governor races up in all of these states. The Wisconsin was a high-profile one from last week, and we did finally elect a centrist there. But all of those races are set. The primaries are over. 2 significant things that have come out of the last week, just on the governor side. The Arizona Governor Hobbs is the Democrat running for re-election against, I think, Andy Biggs, awful MAGA member of Congress that's running against her. She has chosen a former Republican, now no party preference, lieutenant governor on her slate. They run as a pair in elections. This has been widely praised. Some people are horrified at it, but Arizona is a state, the one state that we're losing. We're losing the voter registration battle there. We absolutely need to hold on to the governorship, and this was her choice to do this. So interesting, we'll be following that. So far, things look like that was the right decision to make, but we'll wait and see how the polls look as she goes through. And then just for us here in California, just as a side note, Becerra, who's our our candidate. The first good polls came out showing him up 18 to 25 points, which is exactly where Governor Newsom has been for all of the elections that he's held. So looks like that's going to go over fairly well and easily. No undecided vote left. It's going to follow the same pattern we usually follow here in California. All right, election security. Not a whole lot of updates here. Every call that I go to, everyone is very, very confident that we are doing absolutely everything that we can. There is no alarms being rung at all. 4 levels that we have to be working on at the national defense of our elections. We are now 20-0 with the 30 lawsuits that the Trump administration has filed to access voter rolls, control them, and purge voters from them. They have lost everywhere in both Republican and Democratic states. And we know that the Supreme Court has ruled that we can have mail-in ballots, at least for this election. So their 2 primary ways of going against elections have been defeated. Of course, they're going to try 100 other things, but according to both the Brennan Center and a couple of other election security meetings I've been on, people are very confident that we have an answer for everything that they're going to try, but rest assured they will try. At the state level, we need to pay attention to 2 things. The Secretary of State, hopefully, blue states should be fine. Red states, that's a concern. Are they doing what they're doing, what they need to do to make our ballots accessible to everyone? Every state, though, has a Democratic Party, and Democratic parties should have their own election security plans in place. And I can tell you from California that our state Democratic Party has an entire army ready to go here. They are prepared, as well as, of course, our Secretary of State is. So we are in good shape here in California. Locally, 2 things have to be ready: your local party and the grassroots. They have to be ready to mobilize, not only around protests if something happens in their county, but also be able to access the local media to make sure that the news gets out. And we have a very strong coalition here in our county. So I think we're good here, and I'm hoping that for you all, that is the same way. But it basically feeds off of your protest movement and all the work that's been done for the last 2 years to mobilize and be able to run a protest very, very quickly. And then lastly, there's all of us. We are the last line. There are 3 things that we can do to protect the vote. One is to vote early, to vote as soon as possible. We want to give everybody an opportunity to correct their ballot if something is wrong. And if you vote the day before or the day of the election, there isn't enough time. So everybody needs to vote early. I plan on turning my ballot in the day after I get it. We can all access our ballots online, what it looks like, early, so we can make our decisions and be ready to go and vote the very first chance that we get. You need to have a backup vote plan if you live in an area that is under attack, and that would be any area in the United States that has a majority of people of color in their county. And actually everybody. I don't think anybody's completely safe. So have a backup plan. Know how you want to vote and be ready to have a backup plan if for some reason something goes wrong. And then the last thing, and actually the most important thing that we can do, is to talk to voters. Not only our friends and family about how to vote early, but to make sure that we are helping everybody get to their ballot, turn their ballots in as soon as possible to access in-person voting if they want to. And we do that by working the phones and a really good get out the vote effort. Remember, it's not enough to win by 187 votes this year. That's not going to do it. We need to win by 10,000 votes, 5,000 votes. We need to build margins that are so large that they cannot be challenged. So how do we do that? And where are our priorities? For us here in California, the priority are these House districts, 13, 22, 45, and 48. The phone banking is the best way to do it. We have English-speaking phone banks on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. There's more information on our website. Spanish phone banks have started. If you speak Spanish, please join us. We're calling into the Central Valley on Wednesday nights. On the House side, on the Senate side, Michigan is the priority. He is the candidate. We cannot win the Senate without winning Michigan. He has phone banks every single day of the week. And he also has a call on your own option, which for those of you that are experienced phone bankers, you know that's sort of unusual these days, but you can go in, get trained, get the dialer, and call whenever you want for him. He is opening the floodgates for that. California canvassing every single weekend from now until November, until Election Day. You can sign up on our website. Postcarding, we've just moved to Maine. And we'll be finishing up there in about a week or two, and then we will be moving to 3 areas. We're going to have Spanish postcards available to the Central Valley. We will start out our Get Out the Vote work in English to all 4 of those districts, and we'll be switching to Michigan because Maine is a small state and we're nearing actually the end of those lists, and then we'll be moving to Michigan for September. How do we do that? You can do it on your own, or you can join our Turn Out to Win team. This is our 2026 volunteer effort. There's more information on our website. Maybe somebody can drop the link into that so people can look at that. It's got all of our volunteer opportunities. But when you join the team, you're committing to work every week for some candidate. You can come to our Tuesday afternoon calls where we go through all the election updates, all of the voter outreach opportunities. We have guest speakers. And it's a great way to kind of come together in a community. You can do that. And then lastly, we have an opportunity for those of you that want to phone bank. And remember, phone banking is the most impactful thing you can do from your living room. We have one-to-one training that is available now for those of you that are a little nervous about learning to phone bank. We've trained about a dozen people now in the last 2 weeks. I'm hoping to do many more. So you can find out information by joining our team. And we have a couple of trainers here. Betty is here and Sue Ike is here, and they are helping to train people individually for phone banking. Get ready for the Get Out the Votes work, and a special plea to our postcarders, because postcarding is wonderful. It's fun. We all have a great time doing it, but it ends at the beginning of October. Once ballots drop, we don't write postcards anymore. And that gives you that entire month, the most important month of the year, October, with nothing to do. So come join us on phone banks. They're so easy. We're just calling people, telling them where to vote, making sure they know how to get to their voting locations. You're not going to be talking to Republicans or anything. It's very, very simple. And we really encourage that. And we're happy to train you to do that anytime. So upcoming events, a little bit here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to stop my share on this because that's a little bit outdated. But anyway, we're done. I hope that was helpful to you. I hope that you found some candidate that you connected with, some level of the ballot that you feel like this is where I want to put my effort, because volunteerism is down this year. We're not seeing as many as we hoped. And we really need all of you to hit the phones, write some postcards, knock on some doors. We're happy to help guide you through every single step of that process. So are there any questions right off the bat that we can address?
Sure. So I've got a few here from our chat. We have one question here. It appears more Dems have been voting in primaries. Can we expect that to hold for midterms, or might Republican voters have sat out for the primaries?
Yes, that's a really, that's a great
ahead.
question. The reason that not that we haven't had great turnout, we have, but competitive primaries drive out turnout, and we've had more competitive primaries. So if you're a Republican and your guy is there and he's not running against anybody, you're not very motivated to come out and vote. So it's a little bit of a false hope there. I think Republican turnout will be strong in November, but without Trump on the ballot, I think ours will still be stronger. But yes, that's the reason there's such a shift there.
The follow-up to that is, what are the thoughts on Republicans not voting upper ballot races?
If you don't like your candidate, sometimes you will sit out, but I don't think that's a thing that you can really predict. Their candidates are, I don't see, the only one that I think might be a problem would be Max Miller in Ohio, because he's been credibly accused of domestic and child abuse there, and he refused to come off the ballot. I think you will see Republicans sitting that one out. But across the board, no, I don't think that they'll necessarily sit out because of a candidate. They'll mostly sit out because Trump's not on the ballot, and that's regardless of who their candidate is.
Okay. The next one, question, how does the Department of Children and Family Services play a part in the government on these one big corrupt system changing anything?
Not really sure I'm getting that whole idea there. I don't really see that. I don't see a strong connection. I'm not sure I really fully understand the question.
Okay.
If anybody else wants to chime in, but usually a government agency doesn't have a huge role in, in elections per se. they don't endorse, they don't usually get involved. I know only my daughter is a California state employee. They can't even have a political thing on their Facebook page. They have to be very neutral. So I can't imagine that they're going to be too involved.
Okay. The next question, the Democrats have been delivering better results on both the federal and state levels for many years, but they refuse to talk about it. When I asked Democratic officials like Representative Ro Khanna why, they explained that voters are not interested in results. Where did this self-defeating approach come from, and how do we change it?
That's a great question. It's a big question, probably more than we have the time to speak. It pulls into messaging. It pulls into expectations of what people can do. I think people are very, very frustrated with the party, but minority parties have no power. So some of that is I don't want to say it's misplaced, but people are frustrated because we haven't been able to do anything for years. But if we were in charge, we wouldn't want the Republicans to have any power either. So, we lost an election, and we may not have lost it here in California. We may not have lost it, in some places, but we lost it in a lot of places, and that's the price that we pay. Minority parties have no power. That's what happens in a democracy. So it's frustrating, but hopefully that frustration will turn into votes in November, and we'll get power back.
Yep. Okay. Are there any postcarding opportunities for Maine?
Yes, right now that's all we're doing. We have two campaigns. One is a pro-Troy Jackson campaign, and one is an anti-Susan Collins campaign. We'll be doing that until the addresses are gone. It's a small state, so it's not going to take months to do it. Probably through the end of August, we'll be in Maine. You can sign up on our website.
Awesome. The next question, are phone bank stats really more promising than texting? I just got off Ossoff's phone bank and seem to have more hangups versus interactive responses. When I've texted in the past, more responses, I guess more hangups versus interactive responses when I've texted in the past.
Great,
Just
it's a great
curious.
question. That's a great question. So texting right now, you only get responses because the sophistication of the platforms mean that you're only going to get replies. So the machine will send out 200,000 texts and you may get 50 replies. So that's a little bit of a false sense of how many people you're really reaching. Texting is very expensive, and it's not done anymore the way we used to text back in the good old days. The texting is done primarily internally by campaigns. There will be some texting available, but it's very minimal, and it's mostly around get out the vote. Phone banking is different. Phone banking is live, it's interactive. It is predictive. You're only going to be connected to a live voter, but hangups are part of the deal. It's just the way it is. We don't take it personally. Many people will hang up a couple of times, and then one time they're just going to sit and talk to you. So we keep calling those people back, and usually we get through to people. Phone banking is the most effective thing that you can do. It's live voters, and you have to think of it in a couple of ways. Number one, hundreds of people are doing it. So if you have 20 conversations in an hour, you multiply that times 100. That's a lot of conversations, and you're doing it every single day for 8 months. So you are reaching a lot of voters that way. It's about the quality of the conversations, and every person that you talk to probably talks to 10 people about that conversation. So you're actually reaching more people than you think you are. And it's old school. It's voter by voter, block by block, city by city, over a long period of time, and you make a difference. We collected data in 2024 about the congressional races in the Central Valley, and we found that people that got phone calls and a knock on the door, which they're tied together, they're both on the same list, or 8 to 10% more likely to vote. That's enough to win a lot of elections in the United States, but it only works if you do it over a long period of time with a lot of people. You have to reach a certain amount of people in order to see that 8 to 10% make a difference. But if you are able to do that by running a large and successful program, that's how you win elections, is on the phones.
Lori, could I chime in on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, everyone. Susan Morgan. As Lori mentioned at the top, I've been at this for 10 years. Lori has been at it almost as long. We've got Betty Von Glon here, who's one of our phone bank volunteers, Sue Ike. We hear the same objections to phone banking over and over and over for the last 10 years. People say, I don't like to get phone calls, so I don't want to bother other people. So I'm just going to try to address them kind of one by one. We are not the typical voter, right? Because we are privileged and we receive high levels of information. Most of us have, college educations. We live in areas where we're getting a lot of information and news. There are many voters that are not as privileged or are not as engaged because maybe they're working two jobs or three jobs, or they're seniors and they're in their own home and isolated, or any number of reasons. They're rural and they're isolated for that reason. So the technology of these phone banks, number one, the call lists are highly targeted so that we are calling these exact types of voters that are going to likely welcome the call. And then the technology is like a what's it called? Telemarketer. So you're not, and maybe some of you phone banked years ago and you're having bad memories from years ago when we used to punch in the number and then it would ring and ring and ring. It doesn't work that way anymore. You just sit there. The platform is doing the dialing. When someone picks up, it puts them through to you. And um, I'm trying to think of some of the other objections I hear a lot, but I guess the point I wanted to make is that phone banking is very unpopular, and people really seem to want to justify avoiding it. But because it's unpopular and very few people do it, we are really short phone bankers. And as Lori just said, it is the most impactful because interactive conversations, research have shown that interactive conversations are what move the needle. And canvassing is fabulous, but then there are geographical limitations, and it might take you a whole day to get to a red area where you can canvass. So phone banking gives you the interactivity and the accessibility. And I really hope every single person on this call will give phone banking a try. It actually can be very gratifying, but you know what? Even if it isn't gratifying, and even if you really don't like it, isn't it more important that we win this election? Like, we all do a lot of things we don't love. All right. So let's just all try to, switch our attitude and not like try to figure out a way that we can feel, fine and deciding we're not going to phone bank because we really need you to phone bank.
One of the connections between phone banking and canvassing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that canvassing is really the gold star, right? It's the gold standard. If you can take the last 3 or 4 weekends before an election and have an effective canvassing, you will win an election. And the way we make that effectiveness is by the phones, because on the phones, we take everybody off that list that's either already voting for Adam Gray or will never vote for Adam Gray or have moved to another state or another district or has died or is Spanish speaking. And you identify all of those things on the phone so that target list, when you're sending out your canvassers on the weekend, you're not sending them to a house that somebody's already decided they're going to vote for Adam Gray. You're only going to send them to places that you've identified on the phone, still haven't made up their minds, or that you haven't been able to reach. And it makes the ratio of volunteers to voters effective, where you're actually going to be able to have your maximum effect. So when you're phone banking, you are helping out the canvassers a lot. And that combination of districts and states where you're able to do both really well is how you're going to win an election. And I think it's really fascinating. In New Hampshire, I was searching for ways to help Pappas, right? Out to the list on our website. Where are the phone banks? Where's the postcarding? All they do is canvassing. It's a small state. They can pretty much knock on everybody's door. They must have literally 1,000 canvases scheduled in New Hampshire already with no phone banking. That's what they do. They're able because they know that's the best way to reach their voters. So here in California, where we have 100 times the people there, we need our phone bankers in order to make our canvases that much more effective. So when you do a phone bank, and Sue and Betty can attest to this, if you reach if 20 people are identified as supporters, that's a great evening of phone banking. You have made a huge dent in that. If you've identified people that truly are undecided, even if you've had a conversation with them on the phones, that person's going to get a knock on the door, because that is a worthwhile knock on the door, somebody who's truly undecided. So I really encourage everybody to do it. I hated phone banking. Betty will attest to that. She had to talk me into it years ago. I love it now. And I love it because it's hard and sometimes it's awkward, but there's just nothing more rewarding than getting into a district, into a state, and understanding what's really going on there, really talking to people about what their lives are like and why they vote the way they do. It just makes you a better volunteer all around. So and it's such a supportive atmosphere. We have great communities, great friendships that have developed over the years. We meet every week online, and it's great. The training is fantastic. If you're nervous about it, Betty, Sue, and I will train you personally, one-to-one, so that you don't need to be learning in a group, and you will be ready to go. Any other questions, Matt?
Yeah, we got a couple more here. One is, do you think it's more effective to donate directly to a candidate or to another organization that supports the candidate, i.e. DSCC, DCC, or the DNC?
Susan, you want to take that one?
Well, I think you're more knowledgeable about it.
Well, we just have this concern about donating to PACs. I think donating to a candidate is fine. And now, because of the Supreme Court ruling that allows committees to just drop the money into a campaign account, there's not a huge amount of difference anymore, except that you can't tell the DCCC which candidate to support. They'll just do what they want or they think it's. But there's a situation about PACs, and I think Susan can talk to that really well.
Yeah, okay. The PACs, often they are sort of a form of dark money. A lot of the PACs, the name sounds good, and Citizens United is one, for example. So it sounds good, but the reality is they are returning a lot of your donation to the fundraising effort and to the organization. They have a much lower ratio of dollars that actually go to help the candidate or to help the field organization. So generally speaking, it's best to donate to the candidate or to the national organization, the DNC, or to groups like Activate America, Swing Left, Indivisible, that are doing the work. We have a page on our website, Donate to Win, under the Elect tab, where Lori has put together the highest priority candidates for donations, where she looks not only at their chances of winning, but also their funds vis-a-vis the opponent, because there might be some candidates that we all really like and we really want to win, but maybe they're doing okay as far as their war chest goes versus the Republican. So we look for that sweet spot of a candidate that is a toss-up and that is needing more money vis-a-vis the Republican. But go to our webpage, Donate to Win. And that
I don't think Jon Ossoff needs our money, to be honest with you. Much as I love him, he's raised plenty of money. So some candidates are doing well. It's those new candidates that just got elected that are really struggling.
And also, just one other thing is many people are more drawn to donating to the Senate candidates, and it's really important to donate to the House candidates, those races that we need to flip. They're not maybe as high profile, you're not reading about them, in the New York Times, but they definitely need the donations. And I think Lori highlights that on a lot of those pages. On the Donate to Win page, sorry.
Okay, a couple more questions. One is related to the phone banking. How are people doing the calls protecting their cell number? I don't want a ton of strangers having my phone number. That's my main concern about phone banking.
You are completely protected. The platform will generate a local phone number. Like if you're calling into LA, for instance, it's going to generate a fake number in LA. So it's going to look like it's coming from a local number. So there's a complete firewall. They cannot trace your phone number, your email. You don't even have to use your real name if you want to. Your privacy is completely protected. You don't use your phone. You phone through the computer. The computer becomes a phone bank. You don't ever use your phone at all. It's all done through your computer.
Excellent. Next one, will IndiMarin help Iowa's Josh Turek? And if not, do we just wait for National Activate America to start these and other campaigns which are currently listed as coming on the website?
Yeah, Iowa's the number 9 of all of them. It's the least likely to flip, so it will get the least amount of attention. Iowa, I know there will be a postcarding campaign. I've just heard it's probably going to be in the next week or so for him. But we haven't done a huge amount of work because you have to prioritize. Unfortunately, we have limited numbers of volunteers, so he's been the least likely to flip. So that's why he's gotten the least amount of attention. But there will be a campaign for him available through Activate America at the end of the week, next week.
Okay. And then will there be texting opportunities in the future?
Such a great question. I know Andy would love that. I heard a rumor that the DCCC was going to have a national text team. I have not seen that yet, so I haven't seen any good national texting. Rest assured it's being done, but it's being done internally by the campaign staff themselves because the platforms are so sophisticated now. It's sort of like robocalling. It's much different. I honestly don't know. If we hear of it, we'll make it available to you guys. That's what I can promise you. However, if you get an email from me or Andy that says, here is texting, sign up like that minute because the texting fills up so fast. It's very popular. And they'll only take a certain amount of people. They don't want to be flooded. So don't tag that email to deal with tomorrow because tomorrow will probably be too late.
Yeah, and I just, to Lori's point, that texting is a very popular thing for volunteers. Texts are more expensive. And so oftentimes there's an oversupply of volunteers for texting. And so you get shut out of a text bank or you go to the text bank and they run out of texts. So it's really not a good strategy to think that I'm going to text. That's going to be the way I'm going to contribute to helping win the midterms because there's just not enough text to go around. So that's why stepping up for the tactics that aren't as popular is how you can really have more impact. Matt, I think we should get to the question that this person asked it a couple times. Maybe I'll just paraphrase
Yeah, if
it.
you want to go ahead and do that, that's fine.
Sure. This is my read of the question. I believe is that he is saying that our candidates don't talk about the results that Democrats have achieved enough. That we're not, boasting, if you will, about all the things, all the results Democrats have achieved. This person cites Ro Khanna as saying, voters don't care about results. I don't know if that's a correct quote or not. But anyway, do you have any comments on the issue of maybe candidates not talking as much about results?
If he's talking about results in prior administrations.
Yeah, I guess so, because it's true that there are no results really for Democrats in this trifecta scenario. But yes, probably, I mean, when I think it would be good if we talked more about how Democrats brought about Social Security and brought about, supported unions historically and all these kinds of things that are results that Democrats have achieved over the years. I actually agree that we could do a much better job of making clear to voters what Democrats have fought for and have stood for historically over many years, and that those are the values that we will bring to the future. And all we can really do is try to do that in our own way, in our own personal circles. If we have a conversation with people, sometimes it can go down these rabbit holes of, silly disagreements about this and that. But if you really just always bring your own conversations, because relational organizing is also a very impactful way. Bring your own conversations with people back to the core values and the core results that Democrats have achieved for this country over many years. I think that is a helpful winning communication strategy.
And I think there's a generational touch to that too. Those of us that are old enough to remember those things are one group, but young people, they may not be moved the same way that those of us that have lived through better years. For a lot of young people, they don't know anything else besides Trump. So they're not as so much aware of those. And really, it's not realistic to think that they can fully appreciate all the things that happened before. So it's a mixed bag. It's a good point, though. Messaging for Democrats is an eternal challenge.
Yep.
It's a
Okay,
big tent, and it's a big tent, and it's getting bigger by the minute. So that makes messaging difficult too.
Okay, we have one more question that just came in. Is the phone banking of ground truth as effective as phone banking directly to Democrats to get out the vote?
It's a great question. So earlier in the year, both swing left and, for instance, the California Democratic Party were doing the same kind of thing. It's just deep canvassing, talking to voters about issues, what's most important to them, getting them engaged in the process, trying to get them to feel connected to the Democratic Party. That's pretty much the same thing. They work off different lists. They have a different target audience. Activate America was doing the same thing with their phone banks. But now we're in a different stage. Now we're coming up on more of a tiered approach, where now we're going back and talking to voters and trying to get them to the polls. Ground Truth doesn't have that piece of it in, because their database isn't as connected to the voter rolls in Sacramento, for example. Across the country might be a little bit different, but now we need to be working with a database that can tell every single day who's voted, who hasn't, so that we're not wasting our phone calls. And we're going to be switching to a different script. We're not going to be talking about issues anymore. We're talking to people about how they're going to vote, where they're going to vote. Do they know how to vote? Have they gotten their ballot yet? Have they turned it in? Those kinds of questions. We're going to be moving to that. And the Ground Truth program is going to be continuing more just to get people to vote. So I think in California, they're going to sort of start to not compete anymore. They're going to be more collaborative. And working sort of in different lanes. If you're a voter, you can't get too many phone calls. You can't be reached too many times if you're sort of a reluctant voter. So I think overall it's fine, but you'll see our phone banks, the California Party phone banks, which is what Indivisible Marin participates in, becoming much more practical, much more sort of logistical. Let's get you voting. Don't really care anymore who you're voting for. We're going to be calling people who we already know are going to be voting for us and just making sure they get to the polls. Because saying that you're going to vote for somebody doesn't mean you're going to vote for them. It means that you may not vote at all. Right now, we have the votes. Democrats have the votes in every single race that we talked about today, every single one, to win, if we can get them to the polls. And we've done all the work to get them excited about us. Now we need to get them. And Republicans are going to make it hard to vote all across this country. It's going to take a lot of work. People might be afraid. They might be afraid to go to the polls. I just heard about a city in California that's 20 miles from the closest. This is in California, 20 miles from the closest city. They have no drop box and they have no vote center in California. So you can only imagine, and this is a Republican county, you can only imagine how difficult it's going to be across the country. So we need our help now to get people to the polls. We've already got the votes. The polls show it. The blue wave shows it, but that doesn't mean that we're going to get to the polls. So that's on us. That's on us now.
All right. And it looks like that's it. That's all we got right now.
Great. Well, thank you guys for coming. I know we ran a little bit over. It's great to see so many people. Can't wait to see you all in the phone banks. Please reach out to me or to Susan or to any of us with any questions that you have. Happy to talk to you anytime about the best way to get you involved. But coming here today and getting some information is the first step. So really great to see you. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. We don't have our date yet set for September, but we will be meeting again in a few weeks. I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of new stories to talk about. And then we'll also meet in October shortly before the election. So thanks for being here and thanks for doing the hard work.